Time perception in groups and individuals. First, what is time perception? Time perception, in simple terms, is the way we perceive and comprehend time passing. It's a contemplative cognitive process that is impacted by a variety of factors such as psychological, physiological, and environmental elements. The biggest factors that affect time perception are typically age, attention, and the surrounding environment. Kristen Kostick explains time perception as that each time passing being a percentage of your life. This puts it into perspective on how age can affect it. The older one gets, the less significant a year is in their life, making it appear shorter. A day passing for a newborn is a huge percentage of their life, but to an adult, it's a much less significant percentage. Time perception and attention can be separated into two terms, prospective paradigm and retrospective paradigm. The prospective paradigm is when a person knows that their judgment on time passing will matter. A retrospective paradigm is when a person is unaware that they will be asked about their judgment of the time that had passed. Both of these are important as they play a part in time perception and how it can be altered. One's environment can also make an impact to their time perception. If they're busy and in a busy scenario, time might seem to fly by, but in a slow and controlled and calm environment, it might seem to slow down. Another part is the social side of it. Whether or not they are having fun can affect how they perceive time. For my research, I chose to focus on the environmental aspect of time perception factors. A study was conducted by Mohammed El-Haj and others in 2013 to experiment with a retrospective paradigm. The participants were told to read off a list of numbers off a screen and estimate how much time had passed afterwards. Unaware that they would have to guess how much time had passed, the participants all guessed a shorter amount of time than what had actually passed. The results helped Mohammed El-Haj and others conclude their hypothesis. Their findings shed a light on the relationship between time perception and the ability to mentally project oneself into time, two skills contributing to the human memory functioning. Correlation between pain and time perception was studied by Amandine E. Ray and others in 2017. Their research used a prospective paradigm and tested the participants individually. They had them sit in front of a computer alone and watch short segments on a screen while they had their hands in a cold bucket of water to endure pain. During the non-painful control condition, participants estimated time very accurately, thus eliminating a non-specific bias. This specific piece of evidence helped to shape my research as I wanted non-specific bias in my individual groups, so I made sure there were no other factors like pain affecting my participants. Their results showed that pain made time appear longer as the participants were not enjoying themselves, but rather focusing on the pain that they were enduring. Lucian Gideon Conway III tested time perception on a group of people. He had a group sit and do word puzzles while interacting with each other, and another group without any distractions or interactions. Conway's results suggest that individual experiences of time and mood tend to become more like those of other group members in interactive context, as those in groups were more influenced by each other than those alone to guess a certain amount of time. These key three studies helped me find a gap in time perception research. The gap I ended up finding was the comparison between one's perception of time as an individual and the perception of time as a group in a group setting. Much research has been conducted on individuals and groups of people, but not compared. I wanted to compare the two and see how it affects assumption of time perception. So why does it matter? Having a better understanding of time perception can be beneficial to understanding the human brain and mind a little deeper, as much of this is unknown and hard to research. My question is, how does time perception differ between groups and individuals? My goal in this experiment was to see if this was a factor that affected time perception. With my results, I would have the ability to better understand the famous saying, time flies when you're having fun. Although my results may not explain the science behind the word for word, behind the quote word for word, it may give background as to why time may appear much quicker when someone is enjoying themselves. My hypothesis is that the individual's time perception, while they are in groups, will have a smaller percent error between the actual time and perceived time than their individual trial percent error. The reason behind my thinking is that when one is alone in a room completing a puzzle, one is capable of getting bored and wanting time to pass quicker, making time appear slower. My methodology. The materials needed for my experiment are quite simple. All that is needed is a timer, can be on a phone or a physical timer, a room with limited distractions, no windows or television screens playing, and all clocks to be covered. To gather the most accurate correlation between the effects of others on each other's time perception can be measured by conducting two similar tests. The first test focuses on the group aspect, as it includes the individual's assumption of time perception while being surrounded by others. This allows the individual to feel influenced, distracted, and entertained by those around them, which could create a sense of time passing quickly. The second test is the individual test. This test allows the individual to feel a sense of time by themselves without being influenced by their surroundings. To set up the test, there needs to be a room with no distractions, preferably an empty room with no windows and no clock showing. The same room can be used for the individual test. To choose subjects to conduct my experiment on, I made sure they fit a certain criteria. I wanted my subject to be as similar as possible to eliminate as much bias as possible. To do this, I chose 4 people for each group test. 2 of the subjects should be females and 2 of them males. All 4 of them being between the ages of 12 and 18. I did this because these ages are still young and have not experienced as much life as someone much older, so they might think of time more similarly. Once the subjects have been chosen and the room also has been chosen, bring the subjects into the room to start testing. Gather all the subjects' phones and eliminate any objects or distractions that would interfere with the subject's unawareness of the time passing. Once all the distractions have been removed and human consent forms have been signed, provide the group with a puzzle. The puzzle can be of any size. I chose to do a 1,000-piece puzzle to provide difficulty to keep the subject's mind at work and not focusing on the time passing. Then explain the rules and expectations. Do the puzzle, don't keep track of time, and you may engage while doing the puzzle, and that they will be done once you tell them that they are. Once the rules have been set, start the timer and sit away from them to avoid distracting them. Make sure that the participants are unaware of the amount of time on the actual timer. I chose to have each group do the puzzle for 25 minutes so that it would be easier to compare times between all the groups. While the participants were busy doing the puzzle, I would check in a couple of times to observe their behaviors and progress on the puzzle. I took note of these as they might connect to the end result. Once the timer has ended, I tell the group to stop doing the puzzle as their time has been completed. I ask them to separate into separate corners of the room so that they cannot hear what each other answer. I then ask them the key question of this research. How much time do you think has passed since you started doing the puzzle? I ask that they limit their answers to a whole minute, not any ranges or half minutes, as those would not give any accurate results. Once all 4 have answered, I ask them not to share their guesses with outside people, as I might test on those people. Also, I do not tell them the actual time that had passed for that same reason. It could interfere with my future subjects. Once I have conducted the group test, I ask that the individuals return around a week later. Then a similar test is done. All the same rules and guidelines are applied. The only difference is that this time the subject is alone rather than with 3 other people. This allows the subject to be alone with their individual thoughts and not have any form of entertainment other than themselves in the puzzle. For the individual test, I started a timer for 15 minutes. This allowed for a difference between the individual test and the group test, so it was not an exact replica where they could remember how much time had passed. Similarly to the group test, I check in once or twice to observe what the subject is doing. This allows me to also make sure they are not breaking any of the rules. Once the timer has gone off, I ask the individual how much time they think has passed, take note of it, and ask them not to share their assumption. Using my methodology will accomplish my goal of comparing time perception because I will have 2 sets of quantitative data to compare to each other. Other options may not be as suitable because I am not trying to compare behaviors or attitudes, but rather the actual number of minutes to the test subject has think has gone by. The limitation of my research is each individual may have a different bias towards time passing based on their past experiences. This would affect the quality of my findings because everyone's answers will be a little different. However, these differences are also necessary because that is a component of a group setting. To analyze the data, I compared the percent errors of a participant's group guess time and their individual guess time. If a pattern was found, it would give me an idea as to how the groups and individuals differed. I was unable to find a pattern as the data was widespread and different to each person. Participant 1, as seen in this table, underestimated the actual time in the group test and still underestimated the actual time in the individual test. Whereas participant 3 underestimated the actual time in the group test, but overestimated the time in their individual test. Since the data was so widespread across a more specific pattern, I decided to focus on the larger pattern to see if I could see a simpler consensus. To examine this difference between participants, I decided to create a pie chart. I used a pie chart to show the visual common pattern that was found, as using a table may not be as effective. The pie chart shows the comparison between the participants' over or underestimations for the time passed during both group and individual tests. The term plus means that the participants overestimated the actual time. The term minus means that the participants underestimated the actual time. 8 different outcomes could occur from both trials. The first is plus G minus I, G meaning group test, I meaning individual test. 6 individuals had this pattern through their testing, showing consistency between their trials. The next group is plus G minus I. No one had this pattern through my research, therefore it is not on the pie chart. The following, minus G minus I, was the most common one. 7 individuals had this pattern, also showing consistency. Next is minus G plus I, and there was 1 person with this pattern. The next 4 categories contain perfect guesses. Only one of the categories was found as a pattern, minus G perfect I. The 3 other categories are plus G perfect I, perfect G plus I, and perfect G minus I. Through the pie chart, it can be seen that the majority of the participants were consistent with overestimating or underestimating. Looking at the tables, the 2 most common patterns are visually presentable. Though there is a pattern of overestimating and underestimating both times, there is not necessarily a comparative pattern of continually improving or, on the contrary, guessing a worse time the second time around. The data throughout the tables to show that the data is all fairly inconsistent while looking for this kind of pattern is shown here. This was my second group trial. This is my third group trial, and this was the 4th group trial. All 4 of these trials all show the inconsistency with my results. My analysis showed that there was not a specific enough pattern to come to the conclusion that group setting alters time perception. The reason my data did not come out with a clear answer may be due to 3 key reasons. First, there could have been human error. I may have been testing the participants in a way that would not bring me to this conclusion. Though going through a brainstorming process in the engineering of my research, there are definitely other ways to test this theory in ways that could be more accurate. My methodology had the characteristics to work on paper, but maybe not when actually conducted. My methodology had the characteristics to work on paper, but maybe not when actually conducted. More human error could be due to the fact that the participants may have been too biased to give their true and honest answers, which would skew the results towards there being no difference. If the people I selected to be a part of the research were complete strangers, they may have been more inclined to select what their initial gut feeling was, not what they thought was most likely correct. Another reason is that it may have not gone to plan is that I did not conduct the research on a big enough group. The data may have been more accurate if there were more than 16 participants to demonstrate a pattern. If there were more participants, a pattern may have arisen more clearly than with fewer participants. With such few participants, a pattern may simply be a coincidence, not just a theory that could be justified. The last reason it may not have given justifiable results is that my theory may not exist. There may not be any correlation between time perception in groups and individuals. Since time perception is such a complex idea that has not been fully researched, there's a high possibility that it is only affected by the mind and not outside factors. Future research. If this research were to be picked up for future research analysis, there could be many changes condoned to guarantee more precise results. As stated before, using a larger pool of individuals may give clearer results. Analyzing the results in a different way may show more promising results. Making the actual test longer may make it more accurate, as well as there might be more of a chance for time perception error between the participants' original guess and the actual time, which may show a stronger pattern. This research could be continued for further investigation to fully get an understanding at the factors that affect time perception. Overall, perception of time is altered by many factors, but being in a group of people versus being alone does not seem to be one of these factors. Although my research did show a pattern of consistency of overestimating and underestimated guesses of time, there may be more to uncover on that theory. My research just shows that people may have different characteristics of time perception. Thank you.
I'll insert a loud clapping track there. How did the choices you made when designing or implementing your research method impact your process?
The decision I made gave me results, but they may have given me not accurate enough results. With a bigger group of people, which I could have altered in my methodology, I could have had a better reading. So the decision I made gave me results that were not provable, but that could be learned from.
Okay, thank you. What are the real world implications or consequences related to your findings?
The real world implications or consequences of my findings are that people may be known to be overestimators versus underestimators, just how there are people that are left-handed and right-handed, and that there's people that are left and right-handed. There could be people that are just really good at guessing time.
Okay, thank you. What's the most important research skill that you developed as a result of the process, and how are you going to apply it to your future?
The most important research skill I developed was gaining knowledge from other studies. This was important as it set a foundation for the rest of my research. I can apply this to future endeavors as it can be used for any life skill, not even just for research. It can be used for buying a house and looking into things before that, or even just finding a roommate for college.